right, greetings everyone. Welcome to Terra Prime Live. This week we will be talking about the mental aspects of training. Joining me tonight, we have our council members Ben Judkins and Jared Miracle. How's you guys going?
Doing well.
Very good, very good. Okay. All right. So, yes, mental aspects of training. Now, as we were doing the other shows with the fitness and the forms and all that stuff, a few questions would kind of like trickle in about that kind of thing, like focus and motivation, those types of things. So we thought we'd come together here and address those issues specifically because I think they're pretty important. Um, so yeah. Initial thoughts on my part is that much of the training, even the physical training, is mental in nature, and the differences between everything is going to be a difference in mentality. But everybody's going to respond a little bit different to different things. I don't think there's any out of the box answer to how to train in this way, right? How much mentality you have or whatever. Most of us are from at least partially from Chinese martial arts, which have a lot of kind of philosophy and stuff kind of interjected into them. There's a lot of folk religion and a lot of mythology and all of that kind of mixed up into into the big ball of things. Tai Chi is a perfect example of one of those disciplines. So yeah, so we're coming from some space of knowing what's going on here. So opening thoughts from you guys. Jared?
One of the things that we could do is we could break this down too, and kind of the two different mental aspects of it, right? We've got the mental aspect of training while you're training, what's going on, but also, how you keep yourself motivated to train, right? How you
Right.
carve out that space and set it aside. And you know what? I mean, if you don't win that mental game first, you never get to play the other one.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
The question for me is always how is this training? In what capacity am I training myself? How am I using this to improve me as a person? So while we do a lot of physical training, this is also a form of cognitive training. And so how am I benefiting? How am I, how are the people around me benefiting from it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that um, especially doing martial arts, and I'm going to venture a guess that most of our audience, which is in lightsaber, they're not coming to their training not thinking about anything, right? There's imagination that's involved in this, and this is true of the legitimate martial arts as well. If you're you can, if you're training a traditional martial art or historical type of thing, you may be thinking about those types of things, fantasies and history and all that kind of thing. And if you're a competitor, you're thinking about a hypothetical match that you might be going at, all of that kind of thing. So I think that it intersects with everything, as we're saying. So yeah. So why don't we? That's a pretty good division there, Ben. So let's talk about the first. Let's talk about the first one, right? The mental aspect and motivation and all of that kind of stuff that goes into the training part of it, the training part itself, right? So whether and this is true whether you're doing the fitness aspect of it or whether you're doing the technique form aspect of it, all of that comes in. What would you guys think is in your mind? What's the primary mover? I don't want to say the easiest thing is to say, what's the most important thing? But I know they're not all, it's not all most important or whatever, but what would you think the standout kind of uh, challenge that people probably are going to be having with that mental?
I tend to find that it and we have already some commentary on the YouTube stream about this. People tend to rely too much on motivation,
Mm,
or which is a great deal like if you're in an artistic endeavor, relying on inspiration,
right.
uh, both of which are very weak, and instead learning to apply discipline to show up and, you know, pick up the saber or pick up the pen or what have you, and learn to make yourself do something even when you're not really feeling motivated to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Um,
It's
that
almost like the motivation has to come one step prior to this, right? The motivation doesn't necessarily come when I, pick up my sword or my waster or my lightsaber or whatever it is today, right? The motivation is what got me to structure my schedule so that I wake up an hour earlier in the morning, so I for sure have time to do this after I run,
Mm.
right?
right.
And so motivation doesn't always happen in the moment people think it does, right? It happens in this prior moment where I'm making a decision about, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? What am I trying to transform myself into? Right.
And I
And
think,
that's kind of key.
yeah, and I really like the comparison with motivation and inspiration, because both of these things are very much alike. Um, Inspiration, it's an instant. It happens and you go, oh, okay. And from that point on, the work begins, right? Um, if yeah, I mean, there's the myth and the thing they show on TV where the artist is inspired and they work on this painting until it's done. That's not inspiration, right? That's obsession, right? That's something entirely different. We've all gotten into that headspace, and that is not an inspired headspace. Um, so, and oftentimes when you walk back after the fact, you look at it and you're like, "Wow, was that terrible?" Um, but so there's that. But yeah, the inspiration, the motivation thing, like how do you stay motivated? All of this kind of stuff, and I'll always, discipline is the thing. These are disciplines, right? Gene Ching, when he was on the show for the symposium, said, that people are looking for fun and adventure and everything like that, and there's so much about martial arts which is just not that. Not that in any way, shape, or form. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It's not or anything like that. And you definitely, I don't know that there's any, ethical motivation you can put yourself through. Other than, going and picking a fight with somebody who wants to kill you. Um, you know, I don't know, but that's not the thing. Anyway, so yeah, that's a good.
It makes me think of I don't know if you've read Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art.
No.
Um, it's ostensibly a very short book giving advice to writers, but I think it applies in any kind of endeavor you're going to take. And his approach to writing books. I mean, it's Stephen Pressfield. He knows a thing or two about writing a book. But his approach kind of reminds me of Hemingway, where he shows up and he starts writing, and in the way he phrases it, the muses will come after you apply discipline. You
Yeah.
sort of capture the muses through your mastery of discipline, and then the inspiration will come in fits and spurts.
Right. Yeah. Having a framework, to work within, is one of those things, and I think that's, yeah. I mean, I think it's something that kind of plagues training in general. So discipline. What are some? uh, what What do we say to somebody out there who says they have a lack of discipline, and that's not their thing, or they have an aversion to it, right? Or they're not successful at it, right? They can't seem to get it, right? They keep searching for that motivation.
Discipline is a funny thing. It's just a habit, right? That when you get right down to it, everybody is disciplined because we are all slaves to our habits. And very often we have habits that are taking us someplace where we don't necessarily want to go. But, you are in a very disciplined way, day by day, step by step, going towards that place. And so it's a matter of turning that around. And I think this is where, it's not that there isn't an imaginative element to discipline, because there is, but you have to be able to imagine the thing that you want to do, the transformation that you want to bring about. And that's tough, right? Because if you imagine something too big, you dispirit yourself. You can never reach it. If it's too small, it's not motivating, right? You've got to be able to visualize this place that is motivating enough and challenging enough, but not too challenging that you can't possibly see a way to get there. And then you just start making the small steps and carving out the time day by day. And what I have always found in my life is that the thing that makes that next small step possible is all the ones that happened before it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you don't start off with every single step. You start off with a couple of steps, and then once you've mastered them, adding that next step, and that next step becomes progressively easier and easier. And the thing that keeps you going in that direction is that you have imagined a model that is actually motivating to you, right? It's something that it's inspiring to you, but it is like, not totally unrealistic and totally unachievable, which, then brings up the question, well, how good is, becoming a Jedi or a Sith Lord in terms of inspiration, right? Because a lot of us, may have subconscious models that are genuinely unattainable when you pick up a lightsaber.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. For me, when I am thinking about these things, right? Like, so I love Kung Fu movies. That's where I'm coming from, right? Ever since I was a kid. And I love comic books, and I love all that stuff. And in all of those stories, there's that end of the second act where the hero is down, and in a kung fu movie they'll usually have a training montage, and where they'll get the requisite skill to beat the bad guy or whatever, or something will happen. And I think the thing that comes to mind recently is in Spider-Man Homecoming, when he's trapped under all of the junk and he has to push himself. And that's a really good, I think that's one of these culturally ingrained, and I don't know if it's cultural because it's through all cultures, but it's one of those things that in storytelling and in that is very, very important, where the hero at some point in the hero cycle, the whole Campbell myth thing, at some point must defeat themselves, right? Where they're at the precipice of just giving up, and they have to push through that. I think that would be using your imagination. That could use inspiration. You can think of those things as inspiring, but you can also think of your own stories doing that. This is the part of the story of my story where this is happening to me, right? And it's happening in a long time. When I'm done with this whole thing, all of this awfulness, I can look back on it on my own training montage, right? And it will happen in 2 seconds, right? So you always have that freedom.
Well, that's what this is all about, right? Like ultimately, it's we as humans are all about meaning making, and the way we do that, whether we realize it or not, is that we're constantly telling ourselves this narrative about how life is going. That's how we interpret any kind of the most random of events in life. We find a way to fit that into the narrative timeline so that it makes more sense than just having to accept entropy being entropy.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, we have these, we have these things available to us, but I mean, really, what it comes down to it is there is a reward to the discipline, right? That it can't really be, it can't be imparted to somebody, from somebody else, right? It's it's the old cliche, like my teacher said. It's like, well, I didn't do any of the training for you, right? You did it, right? So no matter how good your teacher is, you have to do the training. Whatever it is that you're doing, you have done. Um, but yeah, it's getting over that mental noise, right? And maybe not being married to your expectations as much, and especially at the beginning, try to get into a nice observational mode, right? So that when you're training, you're trying to observe what's happening instead of, always kind of looking for the horizon and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll lose sight of the horizon, right? That's okay. Just look down, make sure you're doing what you have to do for you, and try to observe what's going on, right? That can often yield lots of information that you overlooked before.
So I'm a very big fan of what's called lifestyle design, which I think anyone who accomplishes, a major task to any level eventually ends up having to engage in. If you perceive yourself, for example, you're going to start jogging, and so you say, I'm going to get all of my jogging gear, and I will put on my jogging gear, and I will jog the route at the jogging track, and for 1 hour every day I will be jogging. You'll perceive that as a pain point rather than making it an organic part of your life that you just can't avoid, making your life inconvenient. The same thing with food. If you know that you're going to overeat Twinkies, instead of, buying the Twinkies and putting them on the high shelf so that you maybe just keep the Twinkies out of the house. It is no
Right.
longer a part of your lifestyle, therefore it is not a problem. And for me personally, that tends to work better than trying to take the time and say, I am training now. Instead, I have my gear strewn throughout my house and I train in the interim moments.
Yeah.
It cuts down on the need for, you know, abject discipline.
Yeah. So right. You have to find ways, and discipline doesn't mean, just, stiff upper lip, grin and bear it, and charge through. You have to find a way to get through it, right? Um, and it's just basically just finding a way to do the things that you need to do, and let wait the things you want to do. Right. So a lot of times we talk about free form. Lots of people, especially at the beginning, they love doing free form with, with lightsaber, just going around and doing random things, and that's great. It's fun. It's good exercise. Get you moving around. It's not really a learning or training activity. It'd be good for a warm up, or something like that. But um, since if you're moving only in intuitive ways, you are limited by your own intuition, right? Only the things that you can do, you will know that you have available for you to do, right? Whereas if you're when you're training, you're actually trying to break out of that. You're actually trying to move forward and go, I want to do the things that I can't do, or that I don't know that I can do, right? And move forward, whether it be competing or fighting, or just going through a form, doing a particular trick, um, diet, right? People want to lose weight. Um, one of the best advices I've ever gotten was from a nutritionist who was working with my dad's tennis coach or tennis team at U of M, and he was like, "Don't try to cut out bad things. replace them with good things. So just try to add good things to your diet. And then naturally those good things will start to push out, the bad things, right? But if you think about trying to cut off, like the Twinkies, right? If you think about, I can't have the Twinkies. Well, the thing about the human brain is that starts it going, well, now I really want a Twinkie. I think Anton LaVey called it the law of the forbidden. You want somebody to press a button, put a sign over the button that says "Do not press button." So you're going to be battling that, right? There's these cognitive biases that we go for, that are just there that we have to overcome.
I think that leads us well into a couple of questions that user, I'm going to go with Drock Angel on YouTube, is asking.
That is Deso.
Oh, is that Deso? Okay.
That is Deso.
Thanks for the questions, Deso.
Yes.
What is a good set of goals to start a path in training? Which I would take to, we could expand that into how do you set goals and use them to reach higher levels?
Right.
And then what are some things in your individual training that you're currently trying to achieve?
Well, the first one, there's no way, again, there's nothing we can pull out of a shoebox and say, here's a good goal. You have to pick your own goals, but always remember your goal does not have to be lofty. Okay. I think the one thing that I've seen as a trainer and as a coach and as a teacher all this time is people set their goals too high, right? Set small goals that you can attain, that you can attain. Whatever. You may have an overarching goal, like I want to get to here, right? Well, you take smaller steps. You take small steps that way, okay? As anybody who's been in the martial arts for any length of time knows, that your goals will tend to change depending on what your level is and how long you've been in martial arts. So yeah, don't be too lofty. Don't try to grab the brass ring, first rotation. That would be my specific advice for that. Who else wants to?
And then what are your specific goals that you're working on?
Well, let's let you guys answer we'll talk about setting goals first for a little bit before we go into our personal ones.
Well, the nice thing about goals is that they're stepped, right? We have big goals, but then those big goals are made up of a number of medium-sized steps, and those medium-sized steps are made up of a number of very, very small steps, right? And by the way, this is really important to, sorry, it's my parrot. This is really important to remember for anyone who is running a saber group or a martial arts group, that you're responsible for helping your students set goals, and you should be helping them set attainable goals, right? Your goal for the day is how much improvement can I see by the end of this class, right? And that's the goal that you should be helping your students to achieve, because that's when they're going to feel that sense of reward, when they are better at the end of the class and they can see that they're better at the end of the class, and that's what makes them enthusiastic about coming back, right? And so there are just a ton of tiny goals that I have in my training, right? So one of the things that I am doing right now in my daily training is I have a big, heavy Meow Dao. Actually, it's not heavy as Meow Daos go, but I mean, we're talking about a sword that's 5 feet tall, right? So I have a 5 foot tall, very, very sharp steel sword. And I am trying to get really comfortable doing all of the versions of Sicho that I know with this live steel blade. And I have done Sicho lots of times with different sorts of training implements, but this one is particularly challenging, right? Because it's 5 feet long. It's a little heavier than what I'm used to working, but you know what? It opens up new elements of Sicho that I just wasn't aware of before. And so it's really rewarding for me to go back to that, first step and take a look at it again through a different lens. And I think that's a good example of how we use a really small step, right? I already know seed show, right? I'm not making a huge adjustment to my training. I'm making a small adjustment to my training, but I'm doing that in service of a medium-sized goal, which is I want to move beyond a mechanic level understanding of seed show. I want to move towards a philosopher kind of understanding of seed show. And that is a goal in service of an even greater goal about, how I want to see myself as a martial artist,
Yeah.
And so, I focus on the things that are small and interesting and, achievable, and you make it a habit.
Yep, definitely. One thing I'll add, as well as small goals, and this is one that I came up with, and I hope I'm not talking out of turn for you, Jared, but it just came to mind. I don't want to forget it. Is, especially when you're starting out, make those goals quantifiable, right? Don't give yourself a vague goals. Say, I want to be able to do 10 pull-ups in, at that. That's so right? When you've attained that goal, right? If you end up going like trying to do a subjective thing, right? You'll almost always be very subtly and subconsciously moving the goalpost on yourself, right? And it's just too easy to do that. So as you're starting them out, as you start out the things, you try to start out with as concrete and objective goals as you can come up with. So yes,
Smart
turn it over
goals.
to Jared.
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate the lead in. I am all about SMART goals. That is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Or as the old saying goes, that which is measured is managed.
Yes.
So if you want to be better at squatting, you need to measure your squatting and then plot out a progression for your squatting. If you want to be better at General Sun's version of Shicho, then you need to plot out how you're going to train in it and how you're going to measure success. That way you have goalposts, because you're not going to climb Mount Everest in one go. You need to establish where the base camp is going to be and then where all of your camps will be after that. Otherwise, you'll die of hypoxia.
Right. Yep. You'll get too high before you know it. the metaphor holds. So, but yeah, that's and like I said, this is something that I got when I was training people in Just Fitness all the time, right? They would say, I want to be better at push-ups. It's like, what does that mean? What do you mean better at push-ups? Right? So what I would do with them is I would help them figure out, and this is what you would have to do running a group or something like that with your students, is you have to help them whittle it down to figure out, well, what is it that they are actually going for, right? What does it mean to the person when they say a better push-up, right? Extend that over to what we do. I want to be able to do Shicho better. What does that mean? How better? You want to get through it without running out of breath? You want to get your stances lower? You want to do it faster? What is better to you? See, and that's what I mean by like staying away from the subjective and all that. And like you said, measurable, something really good. Say, and with something like a martial art or anything like that, that's where a teacher comes in, right? So if you're in our group and you're in TPLA, you have us to ask, right? Hey, I want to blah, 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 blah. Talking with us or your teacher or whatever will help you focus in on what it is you actually want. Sometimes it's hard to tell what we want, right? We can't verbalize it. We can't really put our finger on it. And if we discuss it with somebody who kind of knows the terrain, a lot of times that can come through there.
You know, Ramsey Dewey, I know we're both fans of his. He has a really good paradigm for understanding that, um, where there is a place for group training and there is a place for private training. And the private training is only helpful if you go to the group training and formulate specific, measurable questions. I want to be better at X technique in X position. Can you help me? And that's how you get the most out of working with an instructor. Otherwise, you can just train on your own and have fun.
But even if you're working with an instructor, and you don't know, for instance, on here it's like better form, better posture. Again, what does that mean? What is better form? What is better posture? Right? Because posture is a situational event. It is not a thing. It's something. We take a snapshot of something and we say your posture. Are you hunching in a certain move? Are you this, that, or the other? Are you having, whatever? There are, for everything that we think, there is a concrete kind of thing behind it. And if you can find that out, then you can go. It's not easy at first. That's why we tell people to go with teachers. That's why we set up TPLA, so that people can learn from people, done this before, gone through there. Because when you're in the wilds and you don't have that experience, so much of the stuff looks the same or is the same and looks different. It's not always intuitive. And sometimes we have a hard time ourselves on knowing exactly what our goals are, right? Teachers help us figure out what those are. Good teachers, right? Good teachers to say, what is it that you want out of this? One of our teachers at the Art Institute, a painter named Carl Worson, died just recently. One of the Chicago imagists. If you've ever been in Chicago and you see the big kind of Aztec-looking pink and green monster painted on the side of the building, that was him. Great painting teacher. He was very different in that he wouldn't critique your stuff or anything like that. What he would do is he'd come up to you and say, okay, what are you trying to achieve here? And he was like an encyclopedia. So you tell him and you go, oh, this is how you do that. And he would show you, like you said, you come with a concrete thing, and the guy has an answer because he's done everything before, right? In painting or whatever. So that's just an example.
I think you raise a really good point, though, that one of the main values of having a quality instructor in any endeavor is that they help you formulate questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
But once you're really engaged in your practice too, practice helps you to formulate questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Practice is a type of research, and you unlock potentialities and insights and questions as you gain skills and things that you didn't have before. So one of the main things that I find motivates me, and I do here mean motivation on kind of a day-to-day level, is actually curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I generally have something I am trying to work out when I am practicing. And I mean, it's like genuine intellectual curiosity. There is something that is nagging at me that I am trying to figure out. And, sometimes it becomes an important insight, sometimes it doesn't, but it leads to another question tomorrow. And, Ben Spatz, who's actually a scholar of dance and theater, right? He wrote a book called, What the Body Can Do, Practices Research. And he actually talks about martial arts, and he talks about yoga and some other disciplines like that. And, again, that kind of psychological engagement with physical practice, I have always found, is something that's very fulfilling and kind of pulls me through my month. right? Pulls me through my week as I have my, my practices mapped out, right? There is this overriding question: what can a body do? And what can CHO be? And the answers to that keep changing depending on where you're at with CHO, right? And how far into this you are. I don't think you ever kind of find the end of it.
Yeah. And that, that's a good segue into the second part of that, is remaining motivated long term. What's all of that? And I had something that you had just mentioned that triggered something, and it just left. Oh well, maybe we'll come back.
I'll jump in right quick, and you can recover.
Yes. Yes.
So this is, Ben, you have a great point there, and I think a lot of us end up, those of us who take like an unreasonably deep dive into martial arts for much of our lives, we are motivated by some kind of, there's almost an intrinsic mystery to it. Damon talks about this all the time, right? Like there is a riddle of steel, and we don't even entirely understand what the riddle is, let alone the answers. But we're always chasing that dragon.
Yeah.
There's always something you want to find out, and sometimes it's hard to even articulate what you're trying to figure out, but it's there, and there's a mystery, and it's ineffable, and you have to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. When I don't know what it would be called, the long term. I mean, so if you're doing an activity and it's hard, it's martial arts is difficult because it is difficult. So under normal circumstances, the things that we avoid or the things we don't like doing, they're generally unpleasant and they're not good, right? But this is one of these things where we could actually really enjoy doing it, but also not want to do it. So there's it's that kind of weird duality that pulls at us. When you're, like I said, the goals that you set are going to change, your overarching goals or whatever. I want to be a fighter. Okay. Well, people can only be a fighter for so long, right? I've run into this myself. You're talking about motivation. What are your goals? So we'll bring up my goal right now. My goal is to get back into shape after quarantine. Pretty simple, right? And what does that mean? I need to bring my weight down. I need to get back into my going for my fighting weight, right? I need to be able to go longer, right? So I have a time that I've, kind of a time limit that I'm noticing that I'm hitting the wall at, and I'm going to try to extend that wall, right, as I go, to get it back to hopefully not even just where it was before, but beyond that. And yeah, other than that, just try to shed the tacos and beer that have been accumulating over this quarantine and pandemic.
Please, space tacos, space beer,
space tacos. Yes. Ronto roasters and blue milk. Yes, exactly. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now. For me, the motivation and all of that difficulty that lots of beginners have with, what that is not there for me. I have a very clear goal, and it's a very long road for me to get to it. So you talk about those daily small goals. It's like, okay, I got to, I have to bring my heart rate up to so much 3 times a day, right? That's an example of something, but those are the little tiny goals that I know are just going to have to over time build up until I reach my final one. Matt was over last night and we were playing around, pulled out the steel for the first time in a year, and just said, hey, look at that, this is significantly more taxing than lightsabers. So from now on we're going to be using steel when we spar until we get back into shape. So there's some examples, right? I've had to regress my training. I'm no longer doing, crazy cool rock star stuff. Right now, I'm just bread and butter, get my hips back, get my stances back, get my cardio back. Nice and simple.
I once heard with regards to reading, we all make reading lists and that are far too ambitious. There are books you like to read, and then there are books you like to have read.
Yes.
Right. And I think that goes for training. There are things that you like to do, like free form, and there are things you like to have done or like to be able to do, like training with steel.
Right.
And I think there is a place for the things that are fun to do in the moment, but that long-term goal is way more rewarding eventually.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Or the Mitch Hedberg joke. My friend asked me if I wanted a frozen banana, and I said no, but I want a regular banana later. So yeah.
Interesting. That's definitely an interesting take. All right. What else do we got here on the chat? Yeah, let's see. Here's something I'll pull out here. I always leave my Saturday class wondering how I can do something better or learn something. I think we can all we can all do something better, right? That's a given. So it's figure out what it is. Just like what am I going to choose today, right? Especially starting out when you got all this stuff, it's all new, right? What am I going to choose today? I'm just going to think about footwork, right? And then if you're at class, and I've had this happen to me, and I tell people this, and the teacher says, oh, do this, and you tell your teacher, I'm trying to get the footwork today, right? They will more than likely be like, oh, okay. Because like, oh, somebody's concentrating on footwork. I'm not going to get in the way of that. So that would be. Any other books, resources, or equipment that can be purchased through Amazon Smiles? Yes.
You can what a convenient question. Thanks, Tessa.
Yes. Yes, you can purchase anything on Amazon Smile and choose us as your charity, and we will get a small donation from your purchase.
So I'm gonna formulate this one more pointedly. Suppose that you have $30 to spend on Amazon today to improve your training. What would you pick up?
Oh, what would I recommend somebody pick up, or what would I pick up?
What would you recommend for, say, a beginner?
The Naked Warrior by Pavel Satsuline. And then if you have, I don't know how much kettlebells are running now, and if you have any left over, not $30, but yeah. So if I had to say a book that you would get the Naked Warrior. It teaches 2 exercises: the one-arm push-up and the one-legged squat.
Ooh, that one-legged squat.
Yes.
Thanks, Pavel.
Yes. But you know what? It's, you don't even have to succeed at getting those. It's the effort to do that. If you follow those books, it's got tons of stuff in there that you can apply to all kinds of stuff. That book is in particular is really, really great. I always recommend that one. And it's it's a tough, but it's a very concrete goal. I want to do a full pistol squat.
So Jared, what would you recommend?
Um, other, well, I guess it depends on the goal of your training. Of course, if you're trying to understand how people make meaning out of their training, then I of course have to recommend a book such as, so I don't know, Now with Kung Fu Grip.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But no, I can't actually in good conscience recommend that book. It needs to be rewritten. But I hear Ben has a really interesting book out about Kung Fu.
It's true.
Don't waste your money on it. It will not help you in your training at all.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, you're talking to a bunch of guys who, when somebody asks us, how do we stay interested in martial arts, we kind of look at them sideways like, huh? I don't know. It's never happened to me.
How do I stay interested in food?
Right, exactly.
No, realistically though, in as much as Chad is a fan of kettlebells, I am equally an evangelist for resistance bands. Resistance bands will change your life.
Yes, resistance bands are nice because they have the resistance changes right through the movement, so you have to adapt to it. So it's a different kind of reactive training.
You can carry them through an airport. You can use them as a weapon. They roll downstairs, alone or in pairs, roll over your neighbor's dog. You can train body parts that even a kettlebell can't always get to, like your neck. You can make regular body weight exercises harder. Or if you completely mess up like I do frequently and have to go to a physical therapist, he'll be pleased to see that you already own the resistance bands.
Right.
Anymore, when I have to go in for a new injury, I just bring my bag with me and he selects which one I need.
Yes, yeah. For the fitness things, like I call kettlebells the Russian home gym. Resistance bands are probably the travel gym, right? Because technically speaking, anything can be a kettlebell, right? A bag full of rocks can be a kettlebell, right? Your purse, depending on what you have in it, so wherever you are, you want to train kettlebell, just put a bunch of books in a bag and instant kettlebell, right?
And the great thing is, in both cases, the gains you make off of those directly translate into sabering.
Yeah.
Like you are working the exact motions that you will be needing later. You can even attach the kettlebell to your saber in certain cases, if that's part of your goals. Ben, what would be your suggestion?
Honestly, my suggestion would be $30 in good running socks.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
That is good. Yes.
Okay, you know what? Well, a long time before I discovered sabering, I was doing ethnography with a group of pretty serious semi-pro kickboxers and boxers, right? And these guys all had a really strongly defined sense of goal and vision. I mean, their goal was to win the next fight, that they were going to train 6 months for a fight. And these are people who are training 20 hours a week, for their fights. And it was a great community to do ethnography with, but, their goal was always to be a more disciplined person. And so they fascinated me in that, their tool and their object was the same thing, right? They were building discipline to become disciplined. And running was a huge part of their training. And they kind of converted me to running in two senses. One, and it gives you that moment where you defeat yourself.
Yes.
Every day. And suddenly, that whatever it was that was difficult about sabering is not nearly as difficult as mile 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Everything that we do in martial arts, not everything, I should take that back. There's some really, right, but a lot that we do in martial arts is pretty fun after you finished mile 5 for the day, right? But, in another sense too, I think it also gives you a lot of just basic athletic capital. It may not translate as directly into sabering as, just, studying footwork and knife skills and stuff like that. but you get basic athletic capital out of it that most of us could use. So my recommendation for someone looking to become a more motivated saberist would be some really good socks, because that makes a difference when you're jogging.
Mm.
Oh, I'm just thinking of the 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 chart that says your age and the amount of excitement you get upon receiving socks as a gift. As you get older, that goes up. And it's true. I got 6 pairs of socks this Christmas, and I was elated. Yes.
We've
Right
Well,
officially arrived.
it helps when people start to figure not just tube socks, but like really nice socks.
Yes.
You know,
But this is a good example of why you want a good pair, because I got these really nice socks from Heroes and Villains, Mandalorian socks.
oh, those guys make such good socks.
Yeah, but see, don't train in them too much because
Oh no.
yeah. So yeah, get some good reinforced heel socks
Mhm.
because yeah, you'll go through them.
Smart wool is a quality sock.
Yeah.
But before we wrap this up, I think there's one more item that we have to touch on when we're thinking about motivation, right? And especially this is a good time to do it for our, our students and our students in exile, because we have a lot of people working on Dulon right now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of interested in that we have people here from primarily Japanese backgrounds, and of course there are sword kata, and we have people from Chinese backgrounds, and we have Jin and Dao, Dao Lu, right? What you can tell, if someone has no intentionality when they practice, right? That it can come out as like weird or sloppy looking movement, right? But here's the question for you for sabering, not just one thing, but what are some good intentionalities that we could be looking for? What is our mental game as we are going through Dulon in, a TPLA situation? I'd like to toss that out for both of you.
You want to take that, Jared, first? And
Well, I approach this the same way I do all my training, which is a philosophy called kill your clone. If someone has cloned you in a specific moment in time, say 1 year ago, and you have to face down that clone at some point, are you going to be able to beat yourself from 1 year in the past? Are you stronger in some way? Is your technique better? And so every single day when I'm training, that's my thinking is, am I learning this in such a way that I can now outdo whatever I had yesterday? And as long as I'm doing that, I seem to usually be on the right path.
That's terrifying. Okay.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Should see me at Christmas.
hey, we just got something on the super chat.
Oh, hey, sweet. Thank you, Desu.
Thank you, Dessa. What was the actual the word, the question again?
So basically, what is our mental game when we're training Dulon? How do we do Dulon with the kind of intentionality that brings out the essence of that movement?
Right. So like, because we're talking about like, because we've all seen it, like somebody doing a form and it's it just they're not in it.
It
Right?
doesn't gel. Yeah, they're not in it, and as a result, the form doesn't gel. It doesn't
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's that. Yeah, then that's usually the missing piece. Oftentimes that comes at right when they've just learned the whole sequence.
Right.
And they're getting kind of the sequence in there. Oh boy, what are the? I mean, picturing an opponent at certain times in certain areas is obviously, killing your clone, whatever. If you do kill your clone, right? Make it your body so that you have some sort of objective. If I'm going eye level, that's my eye level, right? It's very easy to change your target up or down, right? So just use yours to aim for something. God, beyond that, I mean, there's so much you could focus on, um, moving through, through the trajectory, um, with obstacles, right? You know, either imaginary or real. Doing it in a different space or terrain or something like that. But just normally, it's it's like one of those things where there's so many answers to it. It's hard to give to give just a few.
I mean, I think that there's got to be an intentionality to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. Like when your teacher first teaches you Makashi, let's say, because we got a lot of people working on Makashi, they may give you one application for a movement, right, in the form. And if all you know is one application for that movement, imagine you're doing that application, right? So a parry has got to be a parry. It's actually got to cover something. It's got to stick to a line, right? A thrust has to be a thrust. The point has to stay on line. It has to have some oomph behind it, right? And but be aware that it changes over time, because it's not a shadow boxing thing at all.
Right.
It's not a one-to-one thing. That parry can also be a tip cut, right? That thrust can also be a parry. And so as you explore, you find more and more. And this is what makes it hard. But the issue is that you always have to be mentally involved with what you're doing, right? It doesn't always have to be the same script that you're running over, but you always have to be mentally involved with, what is the purpose? How does this feel? How am I executing it? How does
And
it feel if I imagine the purpose slightly differently?
And maybe purpose is, we can get at this instead of purpose. It's almost like, what is the type of force, energy, or whatever that is going
Right.
through it?
Yeah.
That it can be many purposes, right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
you have, and I think we're coming from, a tradition which kind of already does that a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
we can drill, we can hack, we can,
Right.
do all these things. So, I guess, yeah. I mean, if you have a problem figuring out where your mental space is or there, go inward, right? Okay, I want to make sure that I'm getting my rotation. I want to make sure that my hips and my knees are in the right places, and I'm just going that. So, just focusing on, probably I mean, that's a really, really good thing to do after you've learned the whole thing, is to go back and relearn it, and then just very meticulously polish every little movement, right? And be in it. Like, am I doing this movement here? Not, I'm thinking 3 movements ahead, right? Okay, I have to get here,
Mm.
which is very easy to do. So, all right. All right. Well, we're kind of here at the end. Do we have anything else to add to that? Jared, you want to say anything, or?
No, I think that pretty well addresses any talking points that I wanted to cover as far as how to interact, psychologically with your training.
Yeah. And discouragement is something we didn't go into, but it's kind of been the elephant in the room this whole time, because what we're really trying to do is we're trying to show you ways that you can avoid getting discouraged, right? Setting those small objective goals is a great way that you won't get discouraged, right? Because you'll be able to, you've got something, right? Oh, I attained that goal. Great. Oh, I attained another one, and then you keep
Right.
going.
People get the moving goalposts backwards. They think the problem is that we always make it easier for ourselves and we cheat.
Right.
That's not the problem at all. The problem is you'll keep pushing those goalposts out and you will just end up saying, I suck, I'm terrible, why am I doing this?
Right.
You will never see what you've accomplished.
It's that same danger we all have of comparing ourselves to other people instead of comparing ourselves to ourselves yesterday.
Right. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Not that any of this is unnatural. we've all gone through this. This is why we're giving this advice. Hell, this is why people invented these systems, because they could see that these are the issues that people struggle with that way. And we're trying to bring them. That's why we're trying to take and make these full kind of traditional martial arts with the lightsaber, so that no matter how deep you dig, there's always something there, right? It's not just on the surface, right? We're not just going through things. So yes, it takes us a little bit longer to go into all of these things. There's a lot more there, but again, it's all there to kind of like add a richness to everything, to help people on the way, right? Give you some attainable goals. We have if you're a student with us, we have our achievements. What's your goal? I want this achievement badge. How do I get that? I have to do this video, and and I have to follow my teacher's instructions. Simple as that, and boom. And we've got these spaced out, so that you start with your formula, you go to your accelerations. It gets increasingly more difficult, so you don't have to jump right into it. All right. Well, we're at the end here. Thank you to everybody on the chat. I see we've had a lot there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks Deso for the super chat. It's good to see that it's working there. We will be back next week soon. I don't know if it'll be next week or the week after. I am planning on going over. We're gonna kind of revisit the old days of TPLA Live when we first started it, and we're going to go through each of the forms as we have it in our system. So we'll go through the 7 forms, and then we'll go through each of the forms, what they mean philosophically, what they have, physically, the different levels of it, all of that kind of stuff. Then you can, of course, go back and watch the old shows and see how much it's changed since then, because it's all been recorded. All right. So thank you, Ben and Jared, for joining me. Thank you, all of you out there, for joining us. Have a great week. We will see you next week. Patience, practice, perseverance. Happy sabering.
Bye.